We don't see many times here. Okay, smart tea for Hawaiian tea crafters. Okay, smart tea for Hawaiian tea crafters. Why did I say smart tea? Well, because in the modern world, the old ways of producing tea, those the ways they have in India and China and Africa, those old ways are no longer sufficient to really make a profit. And now, particularly a new tea producer, has got to be smart to survive in the tea world. So before we go into tea, I'll tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm here. My company, Teacraft, I started up 27 years ago. And before that, I had 27 years with Unilever Research. I wasn't working with tea with Unilever Research all that time. I started off as a crop scientist, and then I became an agricultural engineer. Then I went into food technology, and into food product development, and into non-food product development. So within a year I worked on oysters in food product development, and I became a sanitary towel designer, a sanitary napkin designer, as you'd say, in the non-food product development. And did 7 years with sanitary napkins, incontinence pads, tampons, and diapers. So I've had a lot of experience in a lot of different roles with Unilever, superb training and lots of innovation. And in the last 10 years for Unilever, I got parachuted into tea. Knowing nothing about tea, I was sent out to solve a problem in the tea field because I was a crop scientist. And the problem wasn't in the field. So we telex. Those of you who remember what telex is, we telex back and said, the problem is not ours, it's not an agricultural problem. And we were out in Papua New Guinea at the time. They said, you're out there, fix it. So we soon learned a lot about tea processing because the problem was in the factory. So Teacraft, which I set up, as I said, 27 years ago, we work, I think we've worked in 20 of the tea countries of the world, and I've made tea I've processed tea on 6 of the world's continents. That's a lot of experience. So, actually, where we work, all over that place, but we actually first came across Griff Frost in 2013, when he was looking for a grant application for Hawaiian tea cooperative. And I offered my services as an international tea expert for that. And just about 2 months before that, I'd signed up with Jason McDonald to advise on his project in Mississippi. So in that time, I became very much interested in tea growing in the United States, and through Griff, very much interested in tea growing in Hawaii. Alright, before we go into the HTC part of the presentation, I'd like to show you a little bit of background on tea growing. A little bit of background because we need to look at the conventional industry, the conventional tea industry, which is, as you'll see, very much less organised than the presentation that we've just seen, tea in Japan. Japan in tea growing and tea processing is a generation ahead of the rest of the world, a full generation ahead. So we'll look at what the conventional tea industry is doing, and then we'll look at it as a context in which to set Hawaiian tea cooperative and what they should be doing. First, where is tea corn? Well, you can see there are 3 blocks. Camellia sinensis bartonensis is the China type tea, small leaves, good hardy, and grows in this region, all the way across China. This is the Samica type, which is same species, but Samica grows in northeast India, right across Burma. And then the Cambo type, which grows, funnily enough, around Cambodia. And the Cambodian type is very vigorous plant, with medium-sized leaves and has a sort of bronzy texture, bronzy colour. The Samica is big-leafed, nice and warm, fills up the roots, fills up the toes in the So those are 3 wild types, but there's probably no wild tea left in the world. Tea is a very promiscuous plant. It hybridizes, it cross-fertilizes. So when we say that we've got an Samica, it's actually an Samica type with a little dose of the other 2. Now, commercial plants are often cultivars which are selected for specific attributes. So people say, how many types of tea are there? Well, there's probably in the world about 500 different elite cultivars. The rest are hybrids which don't come true. Right. Where is tea grown? It's grown primarily between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, and you can see well scattered over the world. The red dots are the major tea producers. So major tea here in China, India, Sri Lanka, East Africa. 50% of US tea comes from Argentina and Brazil. Grows well in the tropics at high elevation. You'll see that Hawaii is in that band. So it's in the good area for tea. Okay, so that's where it's grown, and who actually grows it? Well, the big growers are China. Of the 5 million tons of tea that's produced in a year, and these are 2014 figures, it's about 5.5 million tons this last year. So China is the biggest producer there, nearly 2 million tons, followed by India, then Kenya, then Sri Lanka, and these 8 are the top producers in the world. So you see that China and India together produce 63% of the total of the world's tea. And the top 8 producers grow 90% of the world's tea, and the remaining 10% split across 20 other countries. But the big exporters aren't in the same order as the producers. China, you saw, was the biggest producer, but China is down here at number 3 in exporting. And exporting is only 1.8 million tons compared with the 5 million tons that I showed before. So most tea in China and India is actually consumed in their own country. In fact, both of the countries consume about 80 to 85% of their own tea. So it's only the surplus which is exported. Whereas Kenya, which is top, was number 4 as a producer, but it only self-consumes about 5% of its own tea. So it's a big exporter. Okay, now they're the big ones. They're the ones who really grow the bulk of the world's tea and export the bulk of the world's tea. there are plenty of other smaller ones. Some of these might be surprises to you. Scotland, roast tea. England, Italy, Germany, Colombia, in the Azores, New Zealand roast superb oolong tea. Pakistan roast tea, and USA is now growing tea, and I think we've got commercial tea growing in 14 states. Yeah, 14 of your states. Actually, there are some commercial tea growers. But new growers face a fair few problems, and they're isolated from traditional tea expertise, and they're very often growing under marginal conditions, and they're growing in high-cost economies. Alright, tea. Lots of people think that tea in the world is grown by big multinational companies. In actual fact, these big multinationals only grow 15% of the world's tea. 20% comes in national, not international companies. 65% is small farmers. So the backbone of the tea industry is these small farmers. And when I say small, they're really small. Here we have 80% less than an acre. And the numbers are very crazy. In Sri Lanka, there are 400,000 small family tea farms. Kenya, 60,000. Now it's over 600,000 small growers. Primarily, the small growers belong to cooperatives of all sorts of different types of cooperatives, but they are working together. And some of them produce excellent tea. Best quality tea in Kenya comes from smallholders, and the highest production of tea in Sri Lanka comes from smallholders. But on the bottom here, they often are selling less than the cost of production. Although they're enthusiastic, they don't have management skill, many of them. They don't have the management know-how to even realise that they're running at a loss. And it's a way of life for them anyway. What else would they do? Quickly, types of tea that are around. CTC is a type of tea production which is used for making tea for tea bags. Orthodox tea is using equipment I'll show you in a moment. It's the old, using the old process with replicated hands rolling tea, but on a big scale. That method goes back 180 years. Handmade tea, that's showing resurgence now because of specialty teas. Whole tea, matcha is a whole tea. All these three previous teas we were using as water extraction. Matcha and lapet, pickled leaf tea. You actually have the whole of the leaf. You eat or drink the whole of the leaf. Then we have RTD teas and tea extracts. Tea extracts where instant tea are actually extracting the whole of the tea, or you're extracting tea compounds, just specific parts of the tea. Right. How do we sell tea in the world? Well, mostly tea is sold at auction, and to sell all the tea that's sold, there are only 4 auctions in the world. Mombasa, Calcutta, Jakarta, and Colombo. So it all goes out, well not all, about 2/3 of the tea in the world goes through those 4 auctions. So that's the main way it's sold, is from the garden to the auction. And then from the auction it's sold on to blenders and packers or to wholesalers. The alternative is direct selling. About 1/3 of the world's exported tea goes through direct sales to the blenders, wholesalers, retailers and consumers. So this auction system is central to tea selling in the world. Producers here, either on board leaf factories who don't own any land, or the estate factories that do own tea growing land, all sell most of their tea through the auction, through brokers, which comes down to international buyers who blend and tea gets to the consumer. And a small amount comes around the auction system, but governments don't like tea going outside the auction system because the auction system gives some sort of transparency where they can see that people aren't being ripped off. So the auction system is central to traditional tea supply in most of the world, but it's not a model which is well suited to vertical integration. The cooperative model that we've been talking about today, with direct selling of its tea into selected markets, I think is a promising paradigm for a shorter value chain. And with a shorter value chain, a fairer share goes down to the producer. Right, tea is a very simple process. We don't add anything to it, and all we do is take water away from it. The way that we take water away, the manipulation of the process gives you your green or your black or your oolong tea. But it's processing by controlled removal of water under a range of externally applied process conditions. That's a simple process. Now, I cannot emphasize too much the absolute conservative nature of the world's tea industry. With the exception of Japan, which has historically not been part of that industry, the world's tea industry is an absolutely conservative, averse to innovation and investment, and quite often averse to risk as well. It's a very conventional industry. And we'll see in a moment that tea growing methods improved a little faster within that industry than has tea processing methodology, but it's a slow-moving industry. Here's an example of what's happened in tea growing over the past 50 years. In 1940, we were on about 900 kilos of tea per hectare. And by the 2000s, we were on nearly 5,000 kilos per hectare. So in that 50 years, a huge increase, a five-fold increase in production because of the application of technology. First, chemical fertilizers improved yield. Then we had herbicide weeding, which, because people were weeding with hose and damaging the roots, when you replace that with chemicals, you got an increase in yield. Here we had better pesticides, improved cultivars. Around about 65, 70, the BP production of cultivars came in. Here we came in with bringing some irrigation in, reducing the pruning cycle, steam plucking, a new way of getting more productivity out of pluckers, biological pest control, and up to there, planning, improved management, improved planning. So all of those gave tea growing quite an impetus. But in tea processing, we're still back in the Victorian times. One of the processes I talked about was orthodox tea and orthodox rolling table. Here we have one which was 1882, that's 2 years after it was invented. And here we have one from the 1920s. And here we have one still available. Unbelievable, that's progress. progress on there is there's an electric motor on this one, and these are driven by leather belts from a lay shaft. If we look at drying tea, the continuous tray dryer is the machine of choice, particularly for orthodox tea. Again, invented in the 1880s. And here we have one which was really modern version in the 1920s, and one you can still buy exactly the same. So that's the sort of reaction to innovation that much of the tea industry has, I'm sorry to say. Now, that's not to say that they should change, and that I think you'll find that they must change, because there are some quite strong pressures on the industry to change. In 2010, the world became a city graph. The balance of people tipped over to more people living in cities than in the country. People are attracted to towns because there's work there. There's work at a higher price than there is in agriculture. And so China, India, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, East Africa are all facing a labour shortage. I was in Sri Lanka last week, and there they used, when I came into tea, they would have two persons per acre. Now, 30 years later, they have one person per acre, doing the same production, but they are faced with a lack of labour. Another pressure is climate change, volatility of climate, rather than so much as the change. The unpredictability of climate means that an industry to survive really needs irrigation, because a lot of droughts are occurring. They need better drainage because a lot of floods are occurring. So there's a strong driver for them to change their methods there because of climate change and because of population growth. We've now got 7 billion people on the planet. When I was born, it was 2.1 billion. So in my lifetime, it's increased by 3 times the population, and that population all has to be fed, and the pressure on agricultural land means that crops like tea, which is really an unessential crop, are going to get pushed harder and harder out. If you are starving and you have a choice between eating food or a cup of tea, you're going to choose food. So there is a big pressure on the tea industry, being hungry for its land. And rising cost of production, primarily due to the labour shortage. The labour that's left can claim a higher pay. And there's also, on the other end of the supply chain, there is resistance to prices going up. So all of these are big pressures on the traditional tea industry. Just to show an example of where the money goes if you buy a pound of tea, 3/4 is the cost of the green leaf. So the rest, overhead processing and overheads, are just 25%. Now of that 75%, half of that is just labour pay. This other bit is the cost of growing the plants. Half of that cake is cost of labour. So that's putting pressure on tea prices, on tea cost of production at an average of $2 a day. If you're growing tea at $12 a day, at $12 an hour per person, then that really is a big pressure on your pricing. Some countries, of course, have woken up to this and they put in mechanical harvesting. When I started in tea, it was about 2% was mechanically harvested. Now it's about 50% is mechanically harvested. 50% of all your tea is mechanically harvested. Not necessarily on big machines like that, but also with down to hand shears.